Hello dear members of the Soul Stories family. Today we will bring you a romantic, funny love story, so let's get started. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any meaningful stories. Part 1. A Fateful Encounter. The Conquest Begins. Manhattan, New York, a Friday afternoon filled with the blaring sound of car horns and the bustling pace of a city that never sleeps. Skyscrapers tower high, the fading sunlight obscured by their shadows, and the weekend atmosphere brims with excitement. Inside Mount Sinai Hospital, one of the most prestigious medical facilities in the area, the ambiance stands in stark contrast. Cold, quiet, with only the steady beep-beep of heart monitors echoing from the examination rooms, like a familiar background tune of life itself. Here, Dr. Mike Carter, 32 years old, the top cardiologist in the department, sits in his small office, a tranquil corner amid the storm of work. His piercing, ice-blue eyes scan the patient chart in his hand, each line read with absolute focus. He wears dark blue scrubs, his brown hair slightly tousled after a grueling 12-hour shift, yet his sharp-featured face retains an impeccable professionalism, as if fatigue could never touch him. Mike is nicknamed the heartbreak surgeon by his colleagues, not because he breaks hearts in the romantic sense, but because of his exceptional talent in repairing damaged hearts medically, paired with a cold demeanor that keeps emotions out of his work. To him, the operating room is a battlefield, and he is a general who never loses. He's known for his strict life principle: no wasting time, especially on patients who fake illnesses to stall or seek attention. If your heart isn't genuinely in trouble, don't step into my office, he once told a new nurse, his deep voice cutting like a knife. For Mike, every minute is as precious as the beat of a living heart, and he has no patience for pointless games. A few rows of seats away in the waiting area, Annie Brooks, 26 years old, sits with her legs crossed on a gray plastic chair, her hands scrolling through her phone with an excited expression. Her golden blonde hair falls naturally tousled under the fluorescent lights, a few strands dropping over one eye, though she doesn't bother to brush them back. Annie is a freelance fashion designer, beautiful in a classic American way, a radiant smile like sunshine, mischievous eyes always hiding some wild idea, and a touch of craziness she proudly calls her lifestyle. She isn't here for a checkup, but to visit her best friend Sarah, who just broke her leg during a yoga class in Brooklyn and is recovering on the 3rd floor. Annie promised to bring some cheer to Sarah by live streaming the hospital life on Instagram, even though she knows Sarah will just yell at her to stop. Annie has just stood in line to grab a latte from the small coffee stand in the hospital lobby, holding her phone high to film the busy nurses and waiting patients. "Look at this, Sarah. What a stressful hospital. Everyone's so serious," she says loudly through the live stream, her clear voice making a few nearby people turn their heads. She takes a sip of the latte, so hot it makes her wince, then suddenly turns her head. And that's the moment everything changes. Mike steps out of the emergency room, holding a patient chart, his stride brisk yet confident. He stops in front of a middle-aged man clutching his chest in pain, his deep, icy voice ringing out, "Sir, your heart's fine. Stop clutching your chest. It's not a movie set. Go home." The man mumbles an apology and shuffles off, embarrassed, while Annie stands there, her hand gripping the scalding latte, her heart pounding like she's just run a marathon. She stares at him unblinkingly, from the scrubs hugging his broad shoulders, to his piercing eyes cold as the Arctic, to his confident gait as if he owns the world. "Oh my God," she whispers to herself, her voice trembling with excitement. "That's the hottest doctor I've ever seen." Then she shouts into the live stream, "Sarah, forget your broken leg. I just found the soulmate of my life." Sarah yells back from the other end, "Annie, shut up, everyone can hear you." But Annie doesn't care. She laughs loudly, her eyes sparkling as if she's just stumbled upon treasure. From that moment, Annie knows she has to act. Not with a typical Tinder date or a boring coffee meetup. She wants a debut worth remembering, one that will etch her name into the mind of this cold doctor. "He's my biggest challenge," as she tells herself, clutching the latte tightly as if gearing up for battle. And so the plan to fake an illness to win the doctor officially begins, with all the boldness and craziness only Annie Brooks would dare to unleash. The next day, Annie returns to Mount Sinai Hospital, determined to make Mike the first victim of her conquest campaign. She wears an oversized gray sweater that nearly covers her hands, paired with ripped jeans. A look comfortable enough for her act, yet cute enough to make an impression. That morning in her Brooklyn apartment, she stood in front of the mirror for an hour practicing her pained expression, clutching her chest, wincing, breathing heavily. Everything had to be perfect, like a Hollywood actress. "I've got to get his attention," she tells herself, taking a deep breath before stepping into Mike's office. She pushes the door open and collapses onto the patient chair with a carefully rehearsed look of agony, clutching her chest and gasping. "Doc, I swear my heart's been skipping beats since I saw you." Mike looks up from his computer screen, his blue eyes scanning her like an X-ray, emotionless, unmoved. He says nothing, simply stands up quietly, grabs his stethoscope, and places it on her chest. After a few silent seconds, he pulls it away, his voice flat as a robot. "Your heart's fine, better than mine after a double shift. Go home." Annie blinks, trying to salvage it with a charming smile and a tilt of her head. But I feel it fluttering. Could it be love at first sight?" Mike raises an eyebrow, types something into her file on the computer with lightning speed, then pushes his chair back and stands. "Next patient." A nurse steps in, politely ushering Annie out, leaving her standing dazed at the door. "Round one failed," she mutters, but an idea sparks in her mind. "It's not over, Doc. I'm just getting started." The next day, Annie returns with a new script, faking a faint. She picks rush hour after work, when the hospital lobby is packed, to maximize the drama. She walks in, staggers through the crowd, a few shaky steps, a perfect stumble, then collapses onto the floor right in front of the reception desk, clutching her head and crying out, "Oh no, I'm fading." People gather around, some shouting for a nurse, and a young nurse rushes over with a first aid kit, flustered. Annie lies there, eyes half closed, waiting for the moment Mike appears like in a movie. But Mike, passing by after checking a patient, merely glances at her and sighs. A sigh of exasperation she can feel even while pretending to faint. He bends down, checks her wrist pulse for exactly 3 seconds, then stands up, telling the nurse in a cold tone, "She's fine. Probably just needs a coffee. Get her out of here." Annie cracks one eye open, muttering, "Seriously? This guy's tougher than a New York cabbie." The nurse helps her sit up, and a few onlookers chuckle as she's led to the door, her face flushing with embarrassment. Undeterred on the third day, and Annie ups the ante. She walks into Mike's office, this time faking amnesia, an idea she got from watching a medical drama at midnight. She sits down, gazing at him with a bewildered look, her hands clasped like a lost girl. "Wait, where am I? Are you my fiancé?" Mike stops typing, turns to her with eyes that could pierce concrete, sharp, unwavering. "No, I'm your doctor, and you're my headache." "What's your game this time?" he asks, his voice flat but tinged with irritation. Annie grins widely, shrugging casually. "Just checking if you'd play along, Doc." Mike shakes his head, opens her file on the computer, and adds a note. Annie leans to peek, but only catches, "Drama queen, do not treat," before he points to the door. "Out!" She stands, feigning disappointment. "You're breaking my heart, Doc." But as she leaves, she whispers to herself, "He's good. I like this challenge." On the fourth day, Annie goes bigger. She appears in the hospital lobby with her grandest act yet, faking a severe heart attack. She'd planned it meticulously, choosing the noon rush when the lobby's packed for maximum impact. She walks in, clutching her chest, stumbling a few steps, then rolls onto the floor amid the crowd, shouting, "Call 911! I'm dying!" Panic erupts. Some yell for a nurse, one rushes over with a stretcher, and others pull out phones to record. Exactly as Annie hoped. She lies there performing like a Hollywood star, chest clutched, eyes shut tight, waiting for Mike's reaction. He's upstairs in a meeting but comes down the stairs at the sound of the commotion, his face sour. From a distance, he stands with hands in his blouse pockets, watching her performance without a hint of surprise. He steps closer, his voice low and chilling. "Get up." Annie cracks an eye open, weakly. But my heart. Mike cuts her off. Your heart's fine. Your acting's not. You're banned from my clinic. He turns and walks away, leaving Annie on the floor, red-faced amid the crowd's laughter. A kind nurse helps her up, whispering, "Honey, he's tough as nails. Give up." Annie forces a smile. "Not yet. I'm not done." By the 5th day, Annie decides to go all in. She knows she can't get into Mike's office anymore. He's officially barred her with a note at reception. "No Anna Brooks allowed," signed in his firm handwriting like a death sentence. But Annie isn't the type to give up. She stands outside Mount Sinai Hospital on Madison Avenue, holding a megaphone borrowed from a familiar Uber Eats delivery guy after an hour of begging. She takes a deep breath, switches it on, and shouts, "Doctor! Michael Carter! My heart beats for you. Give me a chance." The megaphone's sound echoes across the area, drowning out car horns and pedestrians. Patients peek out windows, nurses at reception burst into laughter, and passers-by stop to film, cheering. "Keep going, girl." A newsboy nearby yells, "Marry her, Doc!" Up in his 5th-floor office, Mike is signing paperwork when he hears the shout through the megaphone. He leaps up, pulls the blinds aside, and looks down in disbelief. Annie stands there, hair blowing in the afternoon breeze, holding the megaphone like a proud warrior, her smile radiant despite the curious stares. For the first time, a crack appears in Mike's icy facade. His cheeks flush, not from anger but embarrassment, a feeling he's never known in his career. "This girl's really crazy," he mutters, but the corner of his mouth twitches upward, a rare smile he doesn't even notice. Dr. Jenny, his colleague beside him, laughs loudly. "Mike, she just made you a TikTok star. Accept your fate, buddy." Annie doesn't stop there. She keeps shouting through the megaphone, "I'll come back, Doc. You can't fix my heart, but you can steal it." The crowd claps and cheers, some yelling, "Say yes, doctor." Mike slams the blinds shut, flops back into his chair, and rubs his temples as if warding off a raging headache. He tells himself he has to end this nonsense, but deep down, he can't deny it. This girl is different, funny, bold, and something that makes his heart, the heart of the heartbreak surgeon, skip a beat, though he refuses to admit it. He mutters, "What am I getting myself into?" Meanwhile, Annie leaves the hospital gate, her heart buzzing with excitement. She knows she's caused a scene, but she doesn't care. Step 1, make him notice me. Check, she tells herself, skipping toward the subway station, the megaphone swinging in her hand like a trophy. She doesn't know that, up above, Mike is pulling the blinds open again, watching her small figure disappear into the sea of traffic. He shakes his head, but this time, he doesn't add anything to her drama queen file. Instead, he leaves the paper on his desk, whispering to himself, what's she going to pull next? A question he doesn't yet realize will soon have an answer. Part 2, developing the situation, building the relationship. After her megaphone love declaration in front of Mount Sinai Hospital, Annie Brooks knows she's left a mark on Dr. Mike Carter's mind. Not the romantic kind she dreamed of, but at least enough to make him unable to ignore her. However, faking illnesses clearly isn't working anymore. Mike has posted a "No Anna Brooks Allowed" note at the reception desk, and Annie hears from her best friend Sarah that he even told security, if she's not actually bleeding, don't let her in. Sitting in her small Brooklyn apartment, Annie sips a cold latte, her eyes lighting up as she devises a new plan. If I can't get into the hospital, I'll invade his life directly, she tells herself, a mischievous smile spreading across her face. She opens her laptop, pulls up Google Maps, and starts hunting for information about where Mike lives. Through a few connections in the fashion design world, Annie discovers that Mike resides in an upscale apartment building in the Upper East Side, a luxurious Manhattan neighborhood with cobblestone streets, lush green trees, and buildings blending classic and modern architecture. Renting an apartment there is far beyond her budget, but luckily, Mike's landlady, Mrs. Rosie, an elderly woman who loves dogs and sweets, happens to be a huge fan of the homemade donuts Annie often makes to unwind. Annie shows up at Mrs. Rosie's door with a box of sugar-dusted donuts and a fabricated story. I just got a job nearby and need a convenient place to live. Can you help me out? After a few minutes of chatting and a strawberry jam-filled donut, Mrs. Rosie nods. All right, young lady, the apartment next to Dr. Carter just opened up. But don't make too much noise. He's a tough one. Annie smiles to herself. I'll try, ma'am. On moving day, Annie deliberately makes a racket to catch attention. She drags her suitcase, hauls bags, and lets her pug, Muffin, a fluffy ball of fur with big round eyes, run loose in the hallway. Muffin bolts straight to Mike's door, barking loudly like an alarm. Mike, just back from a long shift, opens the door with a tired expression, only to see Annie fumbling to pull Muffin back. Oops, sorry, Doc. New neighbor here, she says with a wide grin, waving as if they're old friends. Mike looks at her, then at the dog, his voice icy. You've got to be kidding me. He slams the door shut, but Annie isn't discouraged. She whispers to Muffin, Good boy, phase 1 complete. From then on, Annie launches her daily disruption campaign. Monday morning at 6 a.m., while Mike is catching up on sleep after a night shift, she knocks on his door, wearing an oversized hoodie, her hair tied messily, holding an empty mug. Morning, Doc. Got any coffee? My machine's busted. Mike, eyes blinking rapidly from lack of sleep, opens the door looking like he could kill. There's a Starbucks 2 blocks away, he replies, his voice hoarse. Annie shrugs. But yours is closer. Neighbors help neighbors, right? Mike sighs, turns back inside, grabs a packet of instant coffee, tosses it out the door, and slams it shut before she can say more. Annie holds the packet, laughing. He's warming up to me, Muffin. The next day, Annie pretends her water's out. She knocks on Mike's door, holding a small wrench, her face panicked. Doc, my sink's dead. You're a doctor. You fix stuff, right? Mike opens the door, still in his hospital scrubs, staring at her with an expression that says, I can't believe I'm living next to this person. I fix hearts, not pipes, he says. But Annie pushes past him into her apartment, dragging him to her sink, which isn't actually broken. She'd unscrewed the valve earlier as an excuse. Mike reluctantly bends down to check it, fixes it in 5 minutes, then stands up, brushing his hands. Next time, call a plumber, and stop calling me Doc. Annie beams. Thanks, Mike. You're my hero. He glares at her and walks off, but inwardly wonders why he didn't kick her out right away. The peak comes one Friday night when Annie lets Muffin invade Mike's place. She intentionally leaves her door open, and Muffin dashes into his apartment, leaps onto the couch, and chews on Mike's favorite running shoes, a pair of Nike Air Zooms he'd saved 3 months to buy. Mike comes home, sees the chaos, and yells, Are you serious? Annie rushes over, feigning panic. Oh no, Muffin, bad boy, though her eyes sparkle with glee. Mike holds up the ruined shoes, staring at her. You owe me a new pair. Annie shrugs. How about I owe you dinner instead? Pizza on me? Mike starts to refuse, but then just sighs, tossing the shoes in the trash. Keep that dog away from me. Annie smiles inwardly. He didn't say no to pizza. Progress. Gradually, Mike shifts from annoyed to reluctantly accepting Annie's presence. One rainy night, he hears soft sobbing from the balcony. Annie is out there, hugging a pillow, her shoulders trembling. Mike stands inside, peering through the glass, muttering, Not my problem, but then grabs a cold can of Coke and steps out. He taps the glass, hands her the Coke. You out of tricks yet? Annie looks up, eyes red, not faking this time, but upset after a phone argument with a difficult client that ruined a big order. She takes the Coke, smiling faintly. Not yet, Mike. Thanks. Mike shakes his head in exasperation, but for the first time, he lingers a few minutes, watching the rain with her in silence. Annie glances at him, her heart racing. He's not as cold as he pretends. A few weeks later, Mount Sinai Hospital hosts its annual fundraising gala at the Marriott Hotel in Midtown Manhattan, a glamorous event with chandeliers, live music, and expensive tuxedos. Mike, who hates social gatherings, is pressured by colleagues to attend. Worse, Dr. Jenny, his close friend in the department, warns him, The director's eyeing you for her daughter Lisa. She'll cling to you all night if you don't have a shield. Bring a girlfriend. Mike grimaces. I don't do girlfriends. Jenny laughs. Then fake it, genius. You're a surgeon. Improvise. That night on his way home, Mike spots Annie delivering a gown to a client near the Marriott. She's in a denim jacket, carrying a dress box, whistling cheerfully on the sidewalk. He pulls over, lowers the window and calls, "Hey, Brooks." Annie turns surprised. "Wow, Mike, you know my last name?" He sighs. "Hard not to, with all your stunts. I need a favor." He briefly explains the gala and the Lisa problem. Annie's eyes light up and she shouts, "Jackpot, I'm in." Mike mutters, "I'm gonna regret this," but agrees. At the gala, Annie arrives in a fitted black dress, her hair in soft waves, red heels accentuating her long legs. Mike, in a black tuxedo, waits in the lobby, slightly thrown off for the first time when he sees her. "You clean up nice," he says, his voice still cool. Annie winks. "You too, Doc." Ready to fool the world? They enter arm in arm, and Annie instantly transforms into the perfect girlfriend. She smiles charmingly, spinning funny made-up tales about how she met Mike at a coffee shop. "He spilled coffee on my shirt, then took me to dinner to apologize," making his colleagues roar with laughter. Lisa, the director's daughter, watches from afar with jealous eyes but doesn't dare approach with Annie so confidently by Mike's side. Everything goes smoothly until Annie overdoes the margaritas. After 3 drinks, she snatches the mic from the MC, stumbles onto the stage, and wraps her arms around Mike in front of hundreds of guests, shouting, "Listen up, everyone. This guy's my future husband. Hands off, ladies." The crowd freezes for a second, then erupts in laughter and applause. Mike stands frozen, face flushed, gripping his drink tightly. He whispers, "You're insane." But Annie just laughs. "And you love it," Jenny yells from a nearby table. "Get a room, you two." While the hospital director chuckles, "Well, Mike, didn't know you had it in you." Mike pulls Annie off the stage, his face darkening. "What the hell was that?" Still drunk, Annie slings an arm around him. "Relax, Mike. I just saved you from Lisa. You're welcome." He wants to be mad, but her goofy, drunken smile softens him despite himself. He sighs, calling Jenny over. "Get her out of here before she burns the place down." Jenny laughs, patting his shoulder. "Oh, I've got a better idea. You both need a timeout." Before Mike can protest, Jenny hails a taxi, shoves them into the back seat, and yells to the driver, "Take them to the Marriott. I booked a room." Annie giggles, resting her head on Mike's shoulder. "Best date ever." Mike, his head spinning from the drinks and chaos, mutters, "I'm done," then closes his eyes, letting the taxi take them away. Part 3. Peak of Hilarity. The Mystery of the Ring. The early morning sunlight slips through the thick curtains of a luxurious Marriott hotel room in Midtown Manhattan, shining directly onto the grimace of Dr. Michael "Mike" Carter. He opens his eyes, his head pounding like a hammer, his mouth dry as dust after a night he can only vaguely recall as full of margaritas, laughter, and some kind of chaos. Mike sits up, reaching for the water bottle on the bedside table, but then freezes as if turned to ice. Beside him on the king-size bed covered in pristine white sheets, Annie Brooks lies fast asleep, her blonde hair splayed out like a bird's nest, one arm resting on a pillow, the other wearing a plastic wedding ring glinting in the light. Mike blinks, thinking he's seeing things, but then looks down at his own left hand. A matching ring, cheap and shiny, sits boldly on his ring finger. "What the hell?" he shouts, his hoarse voice echoing through the quiet room. The yell jolts Annie awake. She yawns widely, rubbing her eyes with the sleeve of her crumpled gala dress from the night before, then sits up groggily. "Geez, Mike, lower the volume, will you? I'm dying here." But when she sees him, face pale, eyes wide, hand trembling as he points at the ring on her finger, she panics too. "Wait, what's that?" she yells, holding up her hand to stare at the glowing plastic ring. They lock eyes, silent for 3 seconds like a movie scene, then shout in unison, "What did we do last night?" The hotel room instantly turns into a small battlefield. Mike leaps out of bed, pointing at Annie. "You! This is your fault. You got me drunk and tricked me into some insane marriage trap." Annie, still on the bed, clutches the blanket to cover herself, firing back. "Me? I don't even know how we got here. You didn't stop me, Mr. Heartbreak Surgeon." Mike fumbles through the pockets of his vest scattered on the floor. searching for his phone, but pulls out only a wad of crumpled paper, a few coins, and a broken ballpoint pen. "I don't remember a damn thing after Jenny shoved us into that cab," he roars, rubbing his temples. Annie shrugs, still half asleep. "Well, I don't remember saying I do, so we're even. Maybe you proposed, huh?" Mike glares at her. "Not funny, Brooks." They dive into piecing together their memories, but their minds are a thick fog. Mike vaguely recalls the gala fundraiser at the Marriott, the lively music from the live band, and Annie dragging him into a dance that looked like a mix of cha-cha-cha and amateur hip-hop. Annie remembers drinking margaritas, a lot of margaritas, and shouting something into the mic, followed by Jenny appearing with a sly grin and pushing them into a taxi. "Oh God," Mike groans, collapsing onto the room sofa. "You yelled I was your future husband." Then Jenny said something about a timeout. That's it. Annie cackles, though her head aches just as much. Classic me. But that doesn't explain these rings. Did we rob a pawn shop or what? Mike resolves to uncover the truth before he loses his mind. He rummages through the hotel room, a lavish suite with a white leather sofa, a mini bar stocked with liquor, and a large window overlooking the majestic Empire State Building in the morning light. But he finds no marriage license, no witnesses, nothing except a pile of wrinkled clothes and Annie's red high heels rolling around on the floor. Meanwhile, Annie staggers to her feet, slipping back into her black gala dress from the night before, muttering, "If we're married, I deserve a better honeymoon than this hangover. Where's the champagne?" Mike shoots her a look. "Not funny. We need to figure this out before I have a heart attack, and I'm the one who fixes those." They check their phones for clues. Mike's inbox is flooded with messages from the hospital staff group chat, a slew of texts from Jenny sent at midnight. "Mike, you and Annie were hilarious last night. That dance move, though, where'd you learn that? TikTok material. Check your vest pocket, lover boy. You've got a souvenir." Annie opens TikTok, and sure enough, a video from the gala is trending with over 50,000 views. Her clinging to Mike's neck on stage, shouting, "This guy's my future husband. Hands off, ladies." While Mike stands like a statue, face red with embarrassment. The clip ends with Jenny pushing them into a cab, laughing and waving. "Have fun, newlyweds." Annie bursts out laughing. "Okay, so Jenny ditched us here. She's evil, but still no wedding clue." Mike snatches the phone from her, muttering, "This is a nightmare. I'm never drinking again." They call Jenny, the only one who might know what happened. She picks up after 2 rings, her laughter nonstop. "Oh, you two lovebirds finally awake? How's the newlywed life treating you?" Mike yells into the speaker, "Jenny, what the hell happened? Why are we wearing rings?" Jenny stops laughing, surprised. "Wait, you don't remember? Oh, this is pure gold. Check your vest pocket, Mike. You've got the evidence right there." Annie cuts in, "Yeah, and tell us why we're in a hotel." Jenny laughs harder. "Patience, bride. Just look in the pocket." Mike digs into his vest pocket again, more carefully this time. He pulls out a folded, crumpled sheet of paper that faintly smells of tequila. He unfolds it, reading aloud in a shaky voice. "Certificate of marriage. Congratulations, Michael Carter and Anna Brooks. Issued by Fake Vegas Wedding Booth, Mount Sinai Gala Fundraiser." Below are their scrawled signatures and red-inked fingerprints. Mike smudged across the edge. Annie peeks over his shoulder, collapsing onto the sofa in a fit of laughter. "Oh my God, it's fake! We didn't get married for real. I knew I wouldn't forget my own wedding." The truth slowly unravels through Jenny's story over the phone in hazy flashbacks in their minds. After her husband proclamation on stage, Annie, in a margarita-fueled haze, dragged Mike to a photo booth in a corner of the gala, where the hospital had set up a fake Vegas wedding game to raise funds. The booth was decked out with a neon Vegas-style sign, a staff member in a fake Elvis outfit officiating, and a cheap certificate printer. The idea was for couples to marry for fun, sign a paper, wear plastic rings, and take a keepsake photo, each turn donating $50 to the hospital's charity fund. "You two were so wasted," Jenny recounts, still chuckling. "Annie insisted you'd be her groom. She even tipped an extra $20 for fancier rings, the kind that glow in the dark." Mike starts recalling the scene. though his memory feels like a chopped-up film reel. Annie pulled him into the booth, a nearly empty margarita in hand, shouting, "Come on, Mike, let's make it official." He, already tipsy from 3 drinks his colleagues forced on him at the gala, smirked. "Fine, but I'm not paying for this circus." They signed the paper, left fingerprints in red ink from the faulty printer, Annie smearing some onto Mike's hand, laughing. "Now you're marked." The booth staff handed them 2 glowing plastic rings, and Annie slipped one onto Mike's finger, yelling, "Now you're stuck with me." Mike, drunk, put one on her and said, "Yeah, until I sober up tomorrow." Afterward, they danced some more at the gala, pulling off goofy moves that had the crowd cheering, until Jenny, thinking this fake couple was too adorable, booked a hotel room via an app and shoved them into a cab with a parting, "Enjoy your wedding night, you crazy kids." Mike and Annie, too drunk to register anything, just giggled stupidly and passed out the moment they hit the bed, still wearing the plastic rings like trophies. Back in the present, Mike holds the fake certificate in his hand, slumping onto the sofa, clutching his chest as if escaping a nightmare. "You made me think I was hitched for real. I was about to call a lawyer and cancel my life." Annie, sitting across from him, doubles over laughing until tears stream down her face. "Well, if you were, it'd be to me. Lucky you." She raises her hand, letting the plastic ring glow faintly in the room's dim light, then winks. "Admit it, Mike. I'd be a fun wife. Imagine the chaos." Mike shakes his head, but the corner of his mouth curls into a rare smile. The first time he can't hide his amusement. "You're a walking disaster," he says, tossing the paper aside like shedding a burden. But as he looks at Annie, hair a mess, dress wrinkled, still beaming as if nothing happened, he feels something odd in his chest. Not fear or annoyance, but a gentle, warm sensation. Maybe even a hint of curiosity about this strange girl. He stands, brushing his hands. "Get dressed, Brooks. We're leaving this circus." Annie claps her hands, jumping up. "Okay, husband for a night. How about breakfast?" "My treat, since I almost gave you a heart attack." Mike sighs, but this time he doesn't refuse. "Fine, but no more stunts, you hear me?" Annie shrugs, grinning mischievously. "No promises, Mike." They leave the hotel, stepping out onto the bustling midtown streets, leaving behind the funniest wedding night either has ever experienced. A memory Annie secretly thinks could be a turning point, though it also makes her start to wonder, am I going too far? Are you still following the stories from Soul Stories? Share your thoughts and feelings about today's story in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more meaningful and heartfelt stories from Soul Stories. Part 4. Annie decides to leave, distance and emptiness. After the chaotic, fake wedding night at the Marriott Hotel, Annie Brooks steps out of Midtown Manhattan with a smile on her face, but an indescribable feeling wells up in her chest. She had achieved her initial goal, making Dr. Mike Carter, the cold heartbreak surgeon, unable to ignore her. But as they stop at a small diner for breakfast, amid jokes about the plastic ring and Annie's laughter, she realizes something. Mike isn't reacting the way she'd hoped. He doesn't get angry or snap at her, but there's no sign he sees her as anything more than a comedic disaster. When Annie teases, "So, husband for a night, what's next for us?" Mike only smirks, replying curtly, "Next is you stop breaking into my life." He says it in a joking tone, but his icy gaze makes Annie pause. She laughs loudly to cover it up, but in her mind, she starts to wonder, am I just a joke to him? On the ride back to the Upper East Side, sitting in a taxi amid Manhattan's bustling traffic, Annie stares out the window, fidgeting with the glowing plastic ring. She'd done it all, faked illnesses, pestered him, even turned him into a TikTok star. But Mike still keeps his distance, like an unmelting wall of ice. As the taxi pulls up to their apartment building, Annie turns to him, saying softly, "Hey Mike, I'll stop bugging you now, okay? You're free." She smiles, but this time it lacks her usual radiance. Mike raises an eyebrow, looks at her for a second, then nods. "Good. I could use some peace." He steps out of the cab, leaving Annie sitting there, her heart heavy. That night, Annie lies on her bed in the small apartment next to Mike's, staring at the blank white ceiling, twirling the plastic ring like a keepsake. Muffin, her pug, curls up beside her, snoring softly. She turns on her phone, scrolling through emails, and an old message from a week ago pops up. A job offer from a major fashion company in Los Angeles. An opportunity she'd once declined because she didn't want to leave New York, where she'd built her life and dreams. But now she rereads it with a different feeling. Maybe it's time, she mutters. Maybe I've been chasing something that doesn't even exist. Annie doesn't sleep all night. She thinks about the times she knocked on Mike's door, the silly pranks with Muffin, and the drunken engagement at the gala. She'd thought her persistence would move him, but after everything, she only feels like a fool. A ridiculous girl trying to barge into the life of someone who never opens up. He doesn't need me, she tells herself, tears rolling down her cheeks. And I don't need to keep humiliating myself. By dawn, Annie sits up, opens her laptop, and replies to the email. I'm in. I'll move to LA next week. She has exactly 1 week to pack up. On the first day, Annie calls Sarah, her college best friend, to break the news. LA, are you serious? Sarah yells over the phone, her voice full of shock. What about your hot doctor? Annie laughs weakly. He's not my anything, Sarah. I'm done playing the fool. Sarah tries to convince her to stay, but Annie is firm. I need a fresh start. New York's too loud for me now. At the end of the call, she asks Sarah to take Muffin. I can't bring him on the plane yet. You'll love him, I promise. Sarah agrees, but her tone is sad. I'll miss you, crazy girl. On the second day, Annie starts selling her stuff. She posts ads on Craigslist, parting with her old sofa, a scratched-up desk, and even the coffee maker, the one she'd used as an excuse to bother Mike. A young couple comes to buy the sofa, chatting cheerfully as they haul it out of the apartment. Annie watches, feeling empty inside. She packs her clothes, fabrics, and design sketches into suitcases, leaving the apartment increasingly bare. Mrs. Rosie, the landlady, stops by when she notices the moving, asking worriedly, Where are you going, Annie? I like your laughter around here. Annie forces a smile. L.A., ma'am. New job. I'll mail you some donuts. Mrs. Rosie hugs her, whispering, That doctor boy will be sad, you know. Annie shakes her head. He won't even notice. On the third day, Annie officially gives up the apartment. She signs the lease termination with Mrs. Rosie, hands over the keys, and stands in the hallway, looking at Mike's door one last time. She wants to knock to say goodbye, but then stops herself. No more stunts, she tells herself, turning away. She takes Muffin to Sarah's place in Brooklyn, hugging the little dog for a long while before handing him over. Be good, okay? I'll come get you when I settle down, she says, her eyes red. Sarah hugs her. You sure about this? Annie nods. Yeah, it's time. For the remaining 4 days, Annie stays at Sarah's, wrapping up her final tasks, delivering her last design orders, packing personal belongings, and buying a plane ticket to LA, a flight departing at 8 p.m. Saturday from JFK. She doesn't tell Mike anything. No texts, no hints. She wants to vanish quietly, like a breeze passing through his life. But every night, lying on Sarah's sofa, she can't stop thinking about him. His cold eyes, his rare smile, the can of Coke he handed her in the rain. Maybe he'll be happier without me, she tells herself, but her heart aches. While Annie silently withdraws from his life, Mike initially feels relieved. The first day without a 6 a.m. knock, he sleeps better than usual, undisturbed by Annie's chirpy voice asking for coffee. The second day, he comes home without Muffin barking or chewing his shoes, and he thinks, finally, some peace. But by the third day, the silence starts to bother him. He stands in the kitchen, eyeing the instant coffee packet on the shelf, the one he'd tossed to Annie, and wonders why he kept it there. He opens the balcony door, glancing instinctively toward Annie's place, but sees no sign of her, no lights, nothing but emptiness. Weird, he mutters, closing the door. On the fourth day, Mike begins to feel restless. He comes home from work, walks down the hall, and notices there's no sound of lively footsteps or Annie's whistling from next door. He stops at her door, spotting a fresh "for rent" sign, his heart sinking. She's gone? He asks himself, but then brushes it off. Probably on some crazy trip. She'll be back. He goes inside, turns on the TV, but can't focus. He paces, then grabs a Coke from the fridge, something he never drank before meeting Annie. He stares at the can, muttering, "What's wrong with me?" By the fifth day, Mike can't take it anymore. He goes to work in a foul mood, snapping at nurses over petty things, something he'd never done before. Jenny, noticing the change, pulls him aside in the doctor's lounge. "Okay, spill it. What's up with you?" Mike shrugs. "Nothing. Just tired." Jenny raises an eyebrow. "Bullshit. You've been a grumpy cat all week. This about Annie?" Mike tenses but doesn't answer. Jenny laughs. "Oh man, you miss her, don't you? The chaos, the dog, the coffee runs." Mike starts to deny it but then sighs, slumping into a chair. She's gone quiet. No knocks, no barking. It's weird. Jenny looks at him, her eyes playful. "She's not just quiet, Mike. She's leaving. Tomorrow. LA. Didn't she tell you?" Mike freezes as if punched in the chest. "What?" he asks, his voice hoarse. Jenny nods. "Yeah, got a job offer. She's flying out from JFK, 8 p.m. tomorrow. I thought you knew." Mike shakes his head, his hand crushing the Coke can until it dents. "She didn't say anything." Jenny pats his shoulder. "You're an idiot, you know that. She's been throwing herself at you for weeks and you just sat there like a brick wall. Now she's gone, and you're moping? Do something, Mike." He looks at her, silent, but his mind is a mess. He remembers Annie's laugh, the way she shouted his name through a megaphone, the time she fake cried on the balcony, and he stood there, unsure why he didn't walk away. "I don't want her to leave," he whispers, admitting it to himself for the first time. That night, Mike doesn't sleep. He sits in his dark living room, holding the plastic ring from the gala, something he'd kept for reasons he couldn't explain. He watches it glow faintly in the darkness, and for the first time, the heartbreak surgeon feels his heart beating out of control. He stands, opens the balcony door, and looks at Annie's empty apartment again. Still nothing. "She's really leaving," he mutters. He shuts the door, grips the ring tightly, and decides, "I can't let her go." Part 5. Airport Climax, Chasing Love. Saturday, Annie's final day in New York, begins with a gray sky and a light drizzle. The kind of weather she once loved in this city, but now it only weighs her heart down further. She spends the morning in Sarah's temporary Brooklyn apartment, checking her luggage one last time. A black rolling suitcase packed with clothes, design sketches, and a few keepsakes from New York, including the glowing plastic ring from the gala, which she couldn't bring herself to throw away, despite her decision to leave Mike behind. Annie glances at the clock. 5 p.m. Her flight to Los Angeles departs at 8 p.m. from JFK. Sarah hugs her one last time before she gets into the taxi. "Call me when you land, okay? And don't cry over that dumb doctor." Annie forces a smile. "I won't. Promise." But as the taxi rolls through Brooklyn's familiar streets, she can't stop herself from looking back one last time, secretly hoping for something she knows won't happen. She arrives at JFK at 6:45 p.m., stepping out of the taxi and pulling her suitcase through the bustling lanes of Terminal 4. The airport is awash in bright lights, with the steady hum of announcements over the loudspeaker. Flight 237 to Los Angeles, Gate C12. Boarding begins at 7:15. People rush by dragging suitcases, children cry, and the smell of Starbucks coffee from a nearby stand mingles in the air. Annie puts on her earbuds, playing her favorite playlist. Frank Sinatra's New York, New York comes on. A cruel farewell. She wears an old denim jacket, her hair tied high, trying to maintain a calm exterior, but her brown eyes dart around constantly, as if searching for a familiar figure amid the sea of strangers. She drags her suitcase to the check-in counter, handing her ticket and passport to the agent. "Just one piece of luggage, right, Ms. Brooks?" the agent asks in a monotone voice. Annie nods. "Yeah, just this." She checks the wall clock. 7:05. 55 minutes until takeoff. A tiny spark of hope flickers inside her. What if he shows up? What if he actually cares? But then she mocks herself, muttering, "He doesn't care. He's probably glad I'm gone." She takes her boarding pass from the agent, pulls her suitcase toward security, but every hurried footstep or distant call of a name makes her turn back, her heart pounding. Annie pauses at a small Starbucks near the security checkpoint, buying a latte. The last thing she wants to remember about New York. She leans against the wall, watching the flow of people. A family with a suitcase covered in stickers, a businessman shouting into his phone, a few couples hugging goodbye. She sips the latte, burning her tongue, but it's not enough to chase away the chill in her chest. This is it, she tells herself, her eyes welling up. Goodbye, Mike. She turns off her earbuds, pulls her suitcase toward security, determined not to look back, but her heart refuses to obey. While Annie stands at the airport, Mike is at Mount Sinai Hospital, finishing his last shift of the day. After his talk with Jenny the day before, he hasn't been able to stop thinking about Annie, about the strange emptiness of the past week, the plastic ring he's kept in his blouse pocket, and Jenny's words, "Do something, Mike." He stands in the break room, twirling the ring, his mind a tangled mess. He'd thought about calling Annie a dozen times but didn't know what to say. "Hey, don't leave. I miss your chaos." He, a doctor always in control, feels powerless over his own emotions for the first time. The wall clock shows 6:30 p.m. Jenny walks in, sees him still standing there and sighs, "You're still here? Her flight's at 8 JFK. You're running out of time, idiot." Mike looks at her, then at the ring, and suddenly jumps up. "I'm going." Jenny laughs. "That's my boy. Go get her, Romeo." Mike bolts out of the room, not bothering to change out of his white scrubs, just grabbing a jacket as he races to the garage. He hops into his black SUV, slams the gas, and speeds onto the road, his heart racing. I can't lose her. But New York isn't on his side. Rush hour traffic turns everything into a nightmare. He's stuck on the Brooklyn Bridge, cars inching along amid blaring horns and a worsening rain. "Not now," he yells inside the car, slamming the steering wheel. The dashboard clock flips to 7:15. He looks out at the endless line of cars and realizes he won't make it unless he acts. Mike flings the door open, abandons the car on the bridge, shoves the plastic ring into his pocket, and runs. His white blouse flaps in the wind, hair matted by rain as he dashes through the crowd on the sidewalk, panting. Passers-by stare at him like he's crazy, but he doesn't care. "Annie," he mutters, "wait for me." He reaches JFK at 7:40, sprinting into Terminal 4, soaked to the bone, his sneakers slipping on the floor. He scans the departure board. Flight 237 to Los Angeles, Gate C12, boarding. He weaves through the crowd, bumping into someone with a suitcase and shouting, "Sorry," before pressing on. He doesn't know where Gate C12 is, but he spots a line at security, and a gut feeling tells him Annie's there. He's gasping, his heart pounding like it might burst, hand clutching the ring in his pocket. "I'm not too late. I can't be." At Terminal 4's security checkpoint, Annie is among the last in line. She pulls her suitcase, hands her boarding pass and passport to the TSA agent, her eyes scanning one final time. The clock reads 7:50, 10 minutes until the gate closes. The agent finishes, nodding. "Okay, you're good to go. Have a safe flight." Annie gives a faint smile, pulls her suitcase toward the scanner. She takes off her shoes, places her bag on the conveyor, and steps into the machine. But her heart feels like lead. "He's not coming," she tells herself, eyes stinging. She steps out, retrieves her things, and prepares to enter the restricted area, but then pauses, looking back one last time. Nothing but the sound of announcements and a distant crowd. She takes a deep breath, pulls her suitcase toward Gate C12, but after a few steps, a shout rings out behind her. "Annie!" That voice, deep, hoarse, but so familiar it stops her heart. Annie turns, eyes wide, and there he is, Mike, standing dozens of feet away beyond the security barrier, hair disheveled, wet blouse clinging to him, hand raised as if to hold her back. He's panting, shouting again, "Annie, don't go!" The crowd around security turns to look, some whispering, "What's happening?" Annie stands rooted, her suitcase slipping from her hand, heart hammering like it might break free. Mike rushes closer to the barrier, gripping the metal bars, staring at her through the glass. "Don't go. You're the one condition I can't fix." He pulls the plastic ring from his pocket, holds it up, his voice trembling. "I'm an idiot. I should have said this sooner. Stay with me. Annie bursts into tears, streams running down her cheeks. She runs back, darting through the area she just cleared, ignoring the security guard's call. "Ma'am, you can't go back." She doesn't care, racing to the barrier and throwing her arms around Mike through the cold metal bars. "You're here," she chokes out, clutching his shirt. Mike awkwardly strokes her hair, whispering, "Yeah, I'm here. Worst timing ever, huh?" Annie laughs through her tears. "Worst timing ever, Doc. You almost let me leave." A security guard approaches sternly. "Sir, ma'am, you can't do this here. She's already cleared security." Mike turns, still holding Annie through the bars. "Give us a minute, please. I'm begging you." He looks at Annie, his eyes softening in a rare way. "I was stupid. I didn't realize how much I needed you until you were gone. Stay, Annie. New York's not the same without your chaos." Annie laughs, crying and nodding. "Okay, you big idiot, but you owe me a latte for this." The guard sighs, shaking his head. "Fine, but make it quick." And she needs to recheck her luggage. Annie lets go of Mike, wiping her tears. "Wait for me outside, okay?" Mike nods, still gripping the ring. "I'm not going anywhere." Annie runs back to grab her suitcase, glancing at him once more, her radiant smile returning to her face. Part 6. Sweet Reunion. A year has passed since that dramatic moment at JFK Airport, and New York seems to have changed. It's no longer just a city of blaring horns and relentless pace, but now a place that holds the sweet memories of Dr. Michael Mike Carter and Anna Annie Brooks. After that fateful night, Annie didn't board the flight to Los Angeles. She dragged her suitcase out of Terminal 4, hand in hand with Mike, and they stood under Manhattan's light drizzle, laughing like two kids who just skipped school. "You owe me more than a latte for this, Doc," Annie teased, and Mike, for the first time shedding his cold demeanor, replied, "How about a lifetime supply?" That marked the start of a new chapter. No more fake illnesses, no more plastic rings, but a real love, clumsy yet sincere. 1 year later, life together in the Upper East Side. Now Mike and Annie live together in a larger apartment in the Upper East Side. Not the tiny unit next to Mike's that Annie once rented, but a new place with big windows overlooking tree-lined streets and a balcony wide enough for both to sip coffee each morning. Annie has brought Muffin, the fluffy pug, back from Sarah's, and he's now an official family member, often sprawled on the sofa or chewing toys scattered around the house. The apartment bears the marks of both of them. Annie's design sketches hang on the walls, a corner of Mike's desk holds medical books, and a fancy coffee machine sits proudly, an insistence of Annie's. "No more instant coffee, Mike. We're civilized now." One autumn evening, Annie stands in the kitchen, wearing an oversized hoodie and shorts, stirring a pot of pumpkin soup, a recipe she learned from TikTok to impress Mike. He walks in from the living room, still in his green scrubs after a shift, hair slightly tousled but a rare smile clear on his face. "Smells good," he says, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Annie turns, winking. "Better than your hospital cafeteria, right?" Mike chuckles softly. "Anything's better than that." Annie raises the ladle, teasing, "Careful, Doc, or I'll make you eat instant ramen for a week." They sit down to dinner at a small table by the window, the warm yellow glow of streetlights filtering through the curtains. Annie looks at Mike, suddenly bursting into laughter. "You know, a year ago, I thought you'd never let me stay. No fake rings this time, right?" Mike stops eating, gazes at her for a second, then stands and walks to a drawer in the living room. He returns holding a small velvet box, opening it in front of her. Inside is a real ring, simple silver but sparkling under the light. "This time I'm sober and sure," he says, his voice deep but full of emotion. "Marry me, Annie. For real." Annie freezes, hand covering her mouth, eyes glistening. "Oh my God, Mike!" she shrieks, leaping from her chair and hugging him so hard the soup bowl spills onto the table. Yes, but you're still terrible at timing." Mike laughs, a free, easy laugh he'd never had before, and slips the ring onto her finger. Annie holds up her hand to admire it, then teases, "Better than the glow-in-the-dark one, I'll give you that." They embrace amid the messy kitchen, their laughter ringing out, blending with Muffin's soft snores from the sofa. A few weeks later, a walk in Central Park. A few weeks later, on a late autumn afternoon, Mike and Annie take Muffin for a walk in Central Park, a place Annie always calls New York's Green Heart. The park's trees are ablaze with gold and red, leaves drifting down beneath their feet. Annie wears a long knit coat, holding Muffin's leash, while Mike, in a rare break from scrubs, sports a leather jacket and jeans, looking more relaxed than ever. Muffin bounds around, chasing a flying leaf, making Annie laugh. He's happier than both of us combined. They stop near Bow Bridge, where the fiery sunset reflects on the calm lake water. Annie rests her head on Mike's shoulder, her hand laced with his, the silver ring gleaming in the fading daylight. "You know," she says softly, "I almost left this city, almost left you." Mike turns, looking deep into her eyes. "I almost let you go." "Worst mistake I never made." Annie smiles. "Yeah, you're lucky I'm persistent. And loud." Mike smirks. "Too loud, but I wouldn't have it any other way." They stand there watching the sunset fade, birdsong mixing with the gentle breeze through the trees. Annie suddenly tugs Muffin's leash, shouting, "Race you to the fountain," and dashes ahead, laughing loudly. Mike shakes his head but runs after her, his laughter joining hers, echoing down the park's narrow path. When they reach the Bethesda fountain, breathless, Annie throws her arms around Mike, pulling him into a long kiss under the sunset. Muffin barks a few times as if cheering, then flops onto the grass, lazily watching his parents. As the kiss ends, Annie rests her head on Mike's chest, whispering, "No more running, right?" Mike tightens his grip on her hand, his voice warm and low. "No more running. You're stuck with me now, Brooks." Annie laughs. "Good, because I'd hate to chase you through JFK again." They stand there, holding each other in Central Park, the sunset casting a golden glow over the scene, closing the story of a cold doctor and a crazy girl who found each other amid the sweetest chaos. Thank you for following this heartfelt story of Soul Stories channel. Share your thoughts about the story in the comments below. If you believe that true love can withstand all trials and sometimes begins in the simplest of ways, don't forget to hit the like button and share this story with your friends. To never miss out on touching and meaningful stories, subscribe to our channel and help us spread messages of love and warmth to everyone. Let's cherish the beautiful moments of life and love together.